Dylan Job. I'm the producer and director here at Warhawk here at Incognito Entertainment. I oversee all the production from the direction of the game to all the logistics here for the entire title.
I'm Brian Upton. I'm the game director at Sony Santa Monica, and I'm sort of responsible for writing Herd on the creative end of Warhawk.
On a day-to-day basis here at Incognito, things are incredibly intense. PlayStation 3 is a rapidly evolving technology, and it's incredibly powerful, and the team is constantly coming up with new ways to harness its power.
Sometimes ideas originate with Dylan and with the Salt Lake City team, and sometimes they originate with us in Santa Monica. And the amazing thing is that over the course of the project, we really have discovered we have this unified vision, so we very rarely have significant disagreements over where we're taking the game.
So there's so much new technology on the PS3 that a lot of my time is spent going around and making sure that the designers, the artists, the engineers are using the hardware to its maximum capabilities with the cell processor, with the RSX.
The development process is really strange for me because since most of the development's happening here in Salt Lake and I'm in Santa Monica, I have a very schizophrenic work day. So I spend my time either like being sort of totally cocooned and doing almost nothing to interact with other people, or just talking to people nonstop when I'm here.
I have to do double duty, producer and director. So there's all the really awesome stuff and this, and then at the same time it's like, oh, how much can we fit in? Oh, we've got Blu-ray now, so we can put so much on the disc. But, oh, I can't work this guy 48 hours straight, and so there's this constant tug and pull. So it's this very kind of internal director-producer pull that's always going on.
We eventually got the final look of the Warhawk right, where it looks fast, but it looks muscular at the same time. It looks natural, whether it's with hovering or flying. You can imagine it doing all the crazy aerobatics it's able to do, but at the same time, you don't think, oh, this is just a trivial airplane. It was a very long process, but I think the final result was something we're all really happy with.
And I think seeing the complexity, the diversity, and the quality in Warhawk is really going to be kind of a memorable moment for consumers. Like, oh, that's what next-gen gaming is. It's not a port of another product. It's, oh, that's the new game, and oh my god, it's huge, and oh, it looks great, and it's huge and high def, and whoa! I think that's going to be a key moment.
Our first thought was to make it look like a lot of war games look. Very gritty, very gray, very sort of battle-scarred. We thought, well, if everything's sort of gray and drab from the beginning, it's a little hard to get invested in that. So we eventually decided on a look for the game that's very, very lush and beautiful. There's just blue skies, beautiful puffy clouds, sort of lush green fields, green forests. But then in the middle of that we have, this really, really intense combat action. And the idea is to sort of create a world where you want to preserve it, you want to save it from the violence that's being done to it so that the player gets really invested in what's going on. The technology level of the Warhawk universe is about the level of the 1950s in our world. It's very early jet age. So you have these jet airplanes that are still only one step away from prop planes. They have these large battleships that aren't on the ocean, that fly in the air. Basically, the generators that are involved to lift these huge things are so massive and require so much power, you can't actually put them in a small aircraft. You can only put them in a giant ship. But that means you can have a mile-long aircraft carrier or a mile-long battleship that actually cruises through the skies. But you still have these little jet aircraft like MiGs zooming around and doing dogfights around. We wanted to create a world that wasn't just limited to one type of combat. We wanted, again, to get the feeling of like you have this full spectrum of warfare, from flying to driving around on the ground to battling in a city or battling in the open countryside. So sometimes you'll be fighting a small skirmish inside a village with enemy troops coming right at you, like little squad versus squad actions. But other times we have like these sort of big open rolling farmland spaces where you'll have 20 tanks versus 20 tanks and 100 soldiers on each side charging towards each other over these big open spaces. as we started looking at what was possible on the PlayStation 3, we realized that instead of just being able to use the pilot on these little sort of isolated mini missions, we could actually open up the entire world. We could create this full multimodal experience where you're flying over the battlefield in the airplane, but you can land, get out, run around on foot, hop in a tank.
It's all about perspective. You can see the huge battles from the air and you can see it from the ground. So it allows players to really fight the war the way they want to. They want to engage the battles in the air, they can. They want to get out of the ship and run around and fight ground troops with their rifles and rocket launchers, they can do that too. Or if they want to commandeer some tanks or jeeps and drive around and engage in larger ground battles with other armored units in the Chernovan force, they can do that too. So Warhawk is not just about the Warhawk, but it's all about the grand shooter. And with the power of the PlayStation 3, we bring all of these disparate kind of elements together. The mechanics are similar, but we put them all together and they seamlessly coexist in the same world. And in Warhawk, maybe you were flying around for 3 hours and you just want a little bit of a change of pace. Land, get out, you could have a huge battle on the ground for an hour. You're like, okay, yeah, I'm a huge troop, I know it, I'm a badass, back in the Warhawk, and then start moving the story forward again.
Until we had the power of the PlayStation 3, we couldn't really achieve that because we wanted to have these large spaces, we wanted to have these epic battles. And to bridge the gap in scale, we needed the processing power of the PlayStation 3. We think that the net result is that you have an experience where you're not just this sort of abstracted airplane. You actually are the pilot. You actually are experiencing a human story in addition to this great sort of combat gameplay. And that's the real reason we pushed so strongly to get a game that was so multimodal.
The Cell is a really interesting piece of hardware because it's actually an array of separate processors. So traditionally you might have one game executable running on the main processor. But with the PlayStation 3, we have a bunch of executables, a bunch of separate programs running all at the same time. So some engineers are writing complex software renderers. Some engineers are writing AI routines or physics routines or collision routines. When all of these programs run on separate processors all simultaneously, then all of that data then gets sent back up to the main CPU and then coordinated for the next frame for rendering.
With the expansiveness of our world and with the natural pieces that we wanted to actually have present, the rocks, the grasses, the trees, actually having a modeler hand place all that stuff was simply not feasible. We were actually able to devise a method, actually have the cell processor place the stuff dynamically for us, and to very good results. I don't have to worry about any of that, which is nice.
And it's really interesting because all the engineers can kind of work in these different compartmentalized areas, working on their own specialized, highly evolved, highly adapted little programs that sit on all the various SPUs, and they all just run incredibly fast.
There's actually some overlap in the processing between the RSX's Vertex programs and what you can achieve on an SPU. So it's kind of up to us in terms of where should I skin my geometry? Should I put it on the Vertex program or should I put it on the SPU? So we can actually, given the situation, decide where to put these things.
And the team and I have spent a lot of time to really do the PS3 justice. Use the cell, use the RSX, use the architecture to really make the machine sing. And so when people play Warhawk, I want them to say, this was a fun game, and I felt like I got a next-gen title. PlayStation 3 is a huge step forward from PlayStation 2. We have incredible shader technology that we can use. The RSX is capable of incredible graphics, Vertex programs, pixel programs. So when the cell processor is done simulating all of these complicated particle systems, then the RSX takes over and does complicated frame buffer effects, takes complicated vertex shaders, complicated pixel shaders, and then essentially paints all of that geometry with real next-gen graphics. So once the cell's done with the geometry, it throws it over the wall to the RSX, and then the RSX makes it really pretty.
We feed it command lists full of programs to execute, what to execute them on, all the geometry that they apply to, and they're fed to the RSX, to the Vertex programs, where the Vertex programs run and create polygons. Those polygons are dropped down to the pixel level where it executes another program which kind of pulls in all the textures and per pixel detail.
Because Warhawk is a next-gen high-definition experience, we use the RSX to render high-quality pixels, but not just high-quality pixels, a lot of high-quality pixels. The display is bigger, and in addition to being a bigger display, we do 4x anti-aliasing over the entire screen. So when you see this huge Armada battle, beautiful high definition, and 4 times anti-aliasing, it's an incredibly compelling experience. The surface materials, the lighting, the fog, the dynamic shadows, all of it creates an image that you're not going to see on any other console.